After World War II, a small country in French Indochina declared independence, and the Democratic Republic of Vietnam was born, sparking the First Indochina War. Vietnamese revolutionaries were supported by communist powers such as the Soviet Union and China, while the colonial French government was aided by Western anti-communist powers, mainly the US. The war ended with French Indochina being split into Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, which was further divided into the Communist North and Anti-Communist South administrative regions. South Vietnam, officially known as the Republic of Vietnam, was in constant political unrest. The government suppressed and persecuted communists and was often at odds with the predominantly Buddhist population due to many high government officials being Catholic. Support for communist forces was high in poor countryside areas due to peasants having to deal with high rent and land reforms. North Vietnam, officially known as the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, was led by communist revolutionary Ho Chi Minh. He played an important role in the foundation of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam and became a key figure in the Vietnam War. In 1960, communist and anti-government forces in South Vietnam were organized into the National Liberation Front, otherwise known as the Viet Cong. They were supported by the North Vietnamese government through the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a military supply route from North Vietnam to South Vietnam via Laos and Cambodia. It was used to send weapons and manpower to the Viet Cong in South Vietnam. The US came up with the idea of a domino theory that stated if one country fell to communism, the surrounding countries may turn communist as well. US President John F. Kennedy wanted to make a stand against communism in Vietnam and started aiding South Vietnam, but was hesitant to put troops on the ground. Meanwhile, South Vietnam was being attacked by numerous rebel forces consisting mainly of Viet Cong and was suffering from raids by North Vietnam. The US tried to help by sending supplies and military advisors, but to not much avail. On the 2nd of August 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, in which a US destroyer claimed to be attacked by North Vietnamese forces, was used as an incentive to put US troops on the ground. The incident was later discovered to be fabricated and possibly used as an excuse to go to war. US President Lyndon B. Johnson ordered airstrikes against North Vietnamese targets. Johnson used these incidents to get Congress to push through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which allowed the US to increase its involvement in Vietnam. In March 1965, the first US troops arrived in Vietnam, consisting of 3,500 Marines. By the end of the year, the number of US soldiers on the ground had risen to 200,000. Although the initial objective of the US forces was purely defensive, it was soon proven to be the opposite. The US bombed the Ho Chi Minh Trail constantly in order to weaken the Viet Cong. It was a gruesome war of attrition in which the US had the technological advantage, but the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong had the support of many of the common people and knowledge of the terrain. On the 30th of January 1968, the Vietnamese New Year, known as Tet, the Viet Cong and North Vietnam launched a large-scale attack which took everyone by surprise. 85,000 troops attacked over 100 cities in South Vietnam, including the capital of Saigon. Despite being caught off guard, the US and South Vietnamese counterattack was extremely effective. The bloodiest battles took place in the former capital city of Hue, near the border between the two countries. Despite the change of plans, the harsh conditions, and poor morale, President Johnson assured the public back home that everything was going according to plan. Reports coming in from journalists on the ground differed heavily from Johnson's official statements, which undermined his credibility and severely damaged his and the war's reputation. Richard Nixon became the US president in January 1969, and at the time, the war was unpopular and started to seem unwinnable, so Nixon began slowly withdrawing US troops from Vietnam. In 1970, North Vietnam invaded Cambodia in support of the country's communist revolutionaries. South Vietnam and the US retaliated, which angered many back home. Many students protested against the escalation of war, and these protests often ended in violent clashes between the police and students. In 1973, both the North and the South came together for peace talks, while at the same time, Nixon ceased all US military operations in Vietnam and stopped drafting soldiers for the war. In the same year, the Paris Accords was signed, which officially ended the US involvement in the war. All US troops were withdrawn from Vietnam by March 1973. In 1975, North Vietnam launched the final offensive against the South, capturing Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, in April of the same year, and effectively ending the war. The next year, the country was unified into the Socialist Republic of Vietnam as we know today.